your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate increases, and the list goes on and on and on. Almost anything that you can think of can happen because the body is responding to these chemicals that's being secreted, and it's ongoing.
So many people, that I talk to say, I knew grief was going to be emotional. I didn't know it would physically hurt, but when people feel these physical pains or they have things going on they don't understand, many times they don't know that they really should consult their doctor, that they physically have these things going on. Now we know that it really is grief that's driving.
Absolutely.
The American Heart Association has just come out and said that one of the risks for heart problems is loss of a loved one.
These are the kinds of things that we feel in response to the death of our loved one. Anger. Why did they leave? Or why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to us? Guilt. Maybe something we wish we had done that we didn't do. Anxiety and worry, oh my goodness, that is so common. Once we lose our loved one, our child, our sibling, or grandchild, then we worry about other children in the family. Something's going to happen to my surviving son or my surviving daughter.
I know, and that drives the siblings crazy.
Yes, our son used to say, "Mom, please give me a break." But
right.
you just know what can happen, and so you worry that it could happen again. Yes.
Right.
Well, I've got a question from a woman, Sarah, and so it has to do with the physical part, and I'm not trying to go backwards here, but she says that her son died 5 years ago, and she still struggles with physical things that she wants to know. Can 5 years after the death of her son, can there still be physical things that she's going through?
Well, I think a big issue here is whether or not other issues have been ruled out. We don't want to blame everything on the grief.
Right.
We do want to go and have it checked because there can be some other pathology that's going on. But the grief, the stress of the grief can cause physical problems. Many people who never had issues with diabetes, for example, will find that in acute grief, their sugar just the glucose just goes off the scale. So others have felt like they were having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And they go and they get it checked out and find that there is no pathology. Then they can then take steps to relax.
And let's talk about crying, because I know crying is a big thing, especially there always seems to be women who think their husbands don't cry enough, or their husbands think they cry too much, or other family members. You want to talk about that?
Crying is such a big issue because many of us cry, but there are some of us who don't cry. So those of us who don't cry, those who cry worry about the other. And one thing here, and everything that we'll say here, depends on the person in many respects. It's very individual, especially the emotional piece. So crying can be characteristic of the person, but if the person is not a crier, or maybe you don't see them crying, maybe they cry away from you, alone, or with someone else. But it is important to let those emotions come if crying is what you feel like doing. The whole issue of what if I start crying and I can't stop? Some people say, I'm just afraid I can't stop. And I have seen no reports, no research that shows anybody who started crying who couldn't stop.
A friend of mine who's a psychiatrist says nobody ever died of dehydration from crying.
Yes, exactly. Right.
So how about depression and death wish and confusion?
Yes. Those are all real emotions that some people do feel. And the depression, here again, we do want to be careful that we don't classified all as being grief related. Now there are different kinds of depression. So we have the situational, and in this case the grief would be situational depression. But we do want to have it checked out to be sure that it's not something going on that's beyond the normal grief reaction. The whole issue of the death wish, that's a very real phenomenon, and we encourage people to find someone that they can talk to about it, share that feeling, because at some point, many times, we do wish that we could join our loved one.
Right, but we don't have anything to do about it. Like we don't have a gun with us or pills sitting by the bed or things. We just, I think a death wish is pretty normal, don't you, Alan? Have you had that?
Yeah, and I want to make a statement with both of you being doctors, because this particular thing is something that is greatly talked about within our organization. And we have 700 chapters around the United States. They're all not run by professionals. They're run by other people who have gone through grief. And we have to be cautious, because so many people will come into our chapter or come to a meeting or on our Facebook page and say, I just want to go join my son or my daughter or my sister or my brother. And a lot of times we just throw out, well, you know what, it is perfectly natural. Most people have that, say that. But and the same thing with depression, because many people say that depression mimics grief, a lot of the same symptoms. But I think what you're saying, Coralease, is that we have to be careful that we take that seriously. Yes, it's a normal part of grief, a natural part of grief, let's say, but also that we want to keep an eye on it. If we start thinking of a plan or something, like Gloria, we have to take it very seriously as well, true?
Yeah, and we have to ask the person, are you seriously feeling this way, and do you have a plan?
Absolutely. Yeah, people think that you're going to encourage them to do it by asking that question, and that's absolutely not the case.
But it's a very important question. If they really have a plan, then we have a problem here.
Absolutely. Yes. Now, what about confusion, Coralease?
Oh, the confusion. That kind of ties in with the distractibility and the forgetfulness and all of that. A perfect example is you're driving along, and all of a sudden you don't know where you're going, why you're here for that moment. Especially in acute grief, you are, and I'll talk later about this issue of driving while grieving, but there is a lot of confusion in the acute stages of grief, where you can't remember things, you forget a lot of things, and you can't concentrate, your brain's kind of in a fog. So that here again will improve as the grief progresses, but at first you're not quite sure who you are anymore. Despair, yes. You're trying to accomplish things, you can't get anything done. A lot of feelings of I just don't know what to do with myself anymore. And that's why Compassionate Friends is so beneficial, because you can share those feelings of despair and depression and worry and anxiety and all, and find out other people have had those same feelings, and you can even share strategies that you used. But one big thing is to talk about them. Yes, the cognitive changes, I touched upon that already, the memory loss. And that's one of the biggest concerns people have is, my memory is so bad, and we all kind of fear that big A, the early Alzheimer's, but it's a side effect, if you will, of grief, that you lose your memory.
I think it's really hard for kids in school, because they don't do well sometimes in math and things like that, and people don't get it. And adults can sometimes not go to work for a while if they're lucky, but kids have to go to school. They don't have that choice.
Yeah. And their grades slip, and everybody's looking at them. Oh, he's doing so poorly. That's because he can't concentrate. He can't remember things. He can't focus.
Yeah, I talked to a woman over the weekend, and bless her heart, she's got a pretty high-level job. She works in the defense industry. She's 4 months bereaved, and so we were talking, and I thought she summed it up well because what she said is the difference now for her, what she notices, and even though she's very early, is to go do her job it takes such greater effort than it did before that when she gets home from the job, she literally, by Thursday of each week, Thursday night, she literally has nothing left. And where before, because it just takes everything, and that's kind of what you're saying, it's harder to focus. So that's normal too. And she just wondered, hey, what's wrong with me? Will that ever come back? I said it's part of grief that it just takes so much more effort to do things that were kind of second nature to you before. And it's that way for a lot of people. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. And it does come back. It does improve. But when you're going through it, you just can't finish your projects. You go from one project to another. You've got 3 or 4 things on your desk, and none of them are complete. All right. This next slide then basically kind of shows a summary of what we've talked about, how the mind and body are connected, and that grief is a stress response, and the stress response then, where you have all these hormones being secreted, that these hormones then affect our body systems. So our goal then is to try to turn off the fight or flight response. In other words, we don't want our body functioning in high gear continuously. And it interferes with your sleeping and everything. I mean, you're just hyper. Yeah.
Well, that gives me a chance to bring in a question. Susan sent us a question. She said that she has problems sleeping. She only sleeps a couple of hours and then wakes up and worries for the rest of the night.
Oh, my goodness. Sleep is probably one of the most difficult to deal with. If you think about it, even when you're not in acute grief, sleep can be impacted by so many different things. If you have to get up early the next morning, some of us don't sleep very well that night. So I basically kind of say to people, start with the environment that you're in. Preparing the environment. That means taking the computer out of the bedroom, taking the TV out of the bedroom, the smartphone, take all those work-related items out of the bedroom and have the bedroom a quiet, serene place to sleep. You need to give attention to the temperature of the room, and then even things like, I usually suggest a wind down time. In other words, just kind of get ready for sleep, get ready for bed, so that you're able to, prepare yourself. And you should go to bed no later than 10 o'clock, but start, half an hour, 45 minutes or an hour before to get ready. Put on your pretty pajamas or your whatever you use for sleeping. But this wind down or chill out period where if you've got something on your mind or something that you may worry about, your to-do list or something, write that down. And leave that outside the bedroom so that when you go in the bedroom, you're going in there to rest and relax and sleep, not worry about what's on your to-do list. So a lot of it's getting rid of some of those distractions. There's so many things that distract us. But
one of the things I've read before is that actually warm milk does have something in it that is helpful to sleep.
Yes.
Also, there's something about drinking caffeine late. For some people can do it. I sure can't do it anymore. Drinking wine in the evening is problematic, or alcohol, because if you drink it with dinner, you may end up waking about 1 o'clock in the morning. So that may be something that you want to cut out if you're having.
Cut out the wine, cut out the caffeinated beverages, and that includes cola. Sometimes we forget that cola have caffeine.
And I was just going to add to that, I think that you can't stress enough how important managing your sleep is. And I remember sleep was something that was I had to have sleep. I was on the road and traveling, and it's something I literally had to manage. I had to think about it in advance, and I think that's what you're saying here, Coralice, is very important.
Plan for it, yes.
Yeah.
I'll have to say that I'm not a pill person, but the only thing I did was I did take sleeping pills occasionally. They were very helpful for me in the beginning when I could not get any sleep at all.
And there may be times that some people may need to take a sleeping pill. But if at all possible, if they set a specific time every night that you're going to bed, go to bed at the same time, try to get up at the same time, so that the body gets accustomed to those times. But there will come a time that we may need to take a sleeping pill. And I heard you say occasionally, and I think that's helpful too, doing it occasionally. Otherwise, it can become habit forming.
And they're not as effective if you take them all the time either.
Absolutely. Drugs, yes. They definitely will interfere with sleep. And here again, they become habit forming. And I know a lot of people feel like they have to have certain medications, and that might be, but what happens with some of the medications that we get put on is that it takes we don't feel the grief as much, or we don't feel the pain as much, but by the same token, it postpones the grieving. So we end up then not dealing with our grief. So the idea is to go on and just walk right down the middle of that grief, because that's one way to get
one thing I think is really important to realize is while everybody's grieving with you in community, do it. Grieve at the time when the loss is. And Candy Leitner told me, she started Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and she was running around doing this for 3 years. She said, by the time I stopped for my own grief, everybody had moved on but me.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So don't let these drugs stop you from feeling it.
Yes. And for the person who asked the question about sleep, another thing that really helps with sleep is exercise. I can't say enough about exercise. Exercise really helps break that fight or flight response that is ongoing in our bodies. And it certainly helps facilitate sleep, enhances the sleep. So
I love the thought of exercising breaking that fight or flight response, don't you, Alan? Stopping us from having that tension.
Yeah, and for people, like myself, I often think, today we have all this really good information about, what we can do. 14 years ago, maybe this information was out there, but it wasn't easy for me to find. But tell people, Coralice, a little bit, novices like myself, what is it about exercise that makes it work? What's so important about it, and what does it actually do?
Good question, Alan. Exercise obviously increases the circulation. It gets the heart pumping, which increases the circulation. It even gives us kind of a natural high, because the brain starts secreting the hormones that make us feel good. So we even feel better. It kind of raises the energy level. I mean, it all has to do with the hormones circulating throughout the body. And that's what it does. The exercise gets the heart pumping, which then gets the blood moving, and those hormones, the feel-good hormones, get circulated throughout as well. If we all did exercise, we would have a lot fewer chronic illnesses. And I think that's true for the people who exercise. They don't have the same level of chronic illnesses.
I always say to my friends, because I'm older, you can either spend 2 hours in the doctor's office or 2 hours out working out or walking or golfing or whatever you do.
And you could do 20 to 30 minutes. And
that's right.
If you do that regularly, that's even helpful.
Yeah, walking for 20 minutes a day will decrease your risk of stroke by 50%.
The one thing that when I wrote that I was remembering is that You know, when we're in acute stress, when our kids first died, we hold our breath and we're not even aware of it. We either hold our breath or we breathe in such a shallow fashion that we don't even get the oxygen in that we need. So one of them is just to exhale. And I just like to say, if we could just take a moment here. So for all of you out there in webland, just wherever you are, just sit comfortably for just a moment. And I'm going to just ask you to do a couple things here because it's as simple as inhaling slowly and exhaling. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose. And I want you to inhale again, doing it all through your nose. And each time, make it a little bit longer as you inhale and exhale. And next time, I want you to inhale and exhale through your mouth because I want you to purse your lips, make kind of an O shape, and make your exhale each a bit longer. So inhale and exhale. And then just become aware of your breathing and breathe naturally in and out, slowly, very slowly, and concentrate on your breath as you inhale and exhale. And I'd encourage you to just once an hour, particularly for those of you who are in acute grief, to spend just maybe 2 minutes out of every hour just to take a few deep inhalations and exhalations. It will make you feel so much better.
I think that is so great. I feel better already. How about you, Alan?
Yeah, and I will tell you, while exercise wasn't always my thing, I will tell you that breathing for many years, somebody introduced me to this type of breathing, and what it will do to calm me down is really, it's just part of my everyday life now, and it's a huge thing to just, it seems like it calms me down, and it
Yes,
does.
it does. Yes.
Absolutely works.
It really does work. It really connects the mind and body again because they're all, going in different directions with all the stress that's going on. So it brings everything back into synchrony again. Rest and relaxation, that's something that we really do need. We need the sleep, but we also need the rest and relaxation. We need to try and set aside some time for daily relaxation. If we just had 5 minutes, 5 minutes out of the hour, 5 minutes out of 2 hours to just sit and be quiet and do some deep breathing will work wonders for our bodies.
I love that you're saying it can do it in 5 minutes because I think we're all thinking, oh, I don't have, I only have 5 minutes. Well,
Right.
That's enough.
Right. Oh, I don't have time. Usually we think, well, I don't have time to be relaxing. But 5 minutes, preferably every hour, but every 2 hours, even if you do it every 4 hours, it's better than none. And that is so beneficial for calming you down, getting the hormones to settle down again, just breathing to calm the mind and the body. And then, of course, if you're real ambitious and you have a little extra time, things like yoga and meditation and all that's wonderful. It's just so wonderful.
And Tai Chi, everybody's saying that is great now, and that is
Yes.
do that standing if you're a person who you don't want to get in too many yoga positions.
Oh, gratitude, yes. It's interesting because there have been several reports now that actually show that the positive emotion that comes from gratitude, focusing on the positives. And when our kid first dies, we said, what is there to be grateful for? But if we look hard enough, we can always find the friend that did something unusual, or the church member who did something to help. So that whole notion of taking a moment out of our day to say, I am grateful for this, I am grateful for that, or the other. I could remember being so grateful for the people from my church who came here and took phone calls while we were out of the country, and just everything that I was grateful for. And so at the time, I didn't think about it as being grateful, but when I looked back, and I was grateful. And I remember hearing Oprah Winfrey talk about the gratitude journal. Well, that's basically what we're talking about. Just writing down what we're grateful for. And if we can do that every day, just one thing that we're grateful for, they have found that it really seems to relieve stress. It seems to boost the immune system. They think there are a lot of health benefits that come out of this gratitude phenomenon. When we're using sharp knives, when we're using scissors, cooking. I know a number of bereaved parents who said they were cooking and they went off and left the house or did whatever and almost burned the house down. I remember myself putting food in the garbage disposal and turning it on at the same time, and luckily I got my fingers out quickly enough to save my fingers. So you're so distracted. Using things like hot water, if we're boiling water, being careful with all of that. This whole notion of being aware of what it is we're doing and the fact that we are distracted and more prone to accidents and injuries.
I think when we have give out this kind of information, it's validating for some people. And I can imagine the people out there now who are going, oh my gosh, it's not just me. Now, luckily I didn't hurt myself. I walked into a truck mirror just walking down the street. It was one of those bigger trucks, and I banged into it. But let me tell you, we're crazy in grief, and we can't focus. But one day, not long after Ashley died, I walked outside, and on top of my car in the driveway were the ice cube trays. Back in the day, the kids don't know it, but we used to have to fill up ice cube trays to get ice cubes. So what I had done is I had filled up the ice cube trays to put them into the freezer, walked outside and set them on my car, and apparently walked back in the house. Had no knowledge of that. So, it was at that point that I realized, I gotta really focus, take extra focus. But but it happens to all of us, and I think this is good value for people that if you've had an accident or cut yourself or did that, just slow down and realize it's going to take a little more focus and a little more safety than maybe what you used to have.
We encourage people to have a checkup that first year, and if you have a pre-existing condition, by all means to be diligent with your medications and treatments and the like, and following the doctor's advice. And also encourage people to include in those checkups your vision and hearing testing and dentition and all that, because many people will have problems with dental issues. A lot of gum problems and the like can occur because, remember, our immune system is compromised during grief. So we're at risk for all kinds of health problems, including dental caries and gum problems and the like.
And sometimes we feel like, I don't know, Alan, if you felt like this, but at times I felt like I shouldn't be like working out or anything because people would think I wasn't taking my loss seriously enough.
I was on the fried chicken, fried potato, fried anything, sit on the couch. I didn't, for myself, I think I didn't, I felt I don't even know if I felt like I deserved to take care of myself. It was far from my thinking. And I think when people know that there are things, because people want to know what can I do, and now if they can draw the equation that you can do things physically and do things with this gratitude that actually can make a difference. This is huge, and I didn't know about those things. I felt the weight, like I felt like there was just hundreds of pounds on my shoulder. So to get up and try to move that just seemed impossible for me. But had I done that early in my grief, I think I could have helped myself greatly to get up and just walk as far as I could, and so yeah, it was tough.
Yes, and you would feel a lot better if you were able to do some of those things. But at the time, you don't have the energy nor the will, and you just don't care at that point. You're just so wiped out that you don't feel like there's anything I can do. So you just want to sit there.
So key to maintain these pre-existing treatments. I mean, you've got to look at what you're dealing with yourself from the past. Before your child died, you've got to take care of yourself. Somebody at Compassionate Friends in one of my groups, she told me the other day that she was diabetic and didn't take care of it, and she said, I let myself go too low, and I realize it now. She had a stroke, and she said, I should not have let myself go so low.
Yes, and you need encouragement to not let that happen, because it's hard to do on your own. It's very hard to do on your own, to find the initiative and the energy to do anything about your health when you're in such tremendous pain. Well, basically, the stress of grief really does increase our risk for many health problems that we never would have thought we would have problems with. And then complications of existing ones can also come from the stress of grief. But taking care of your health is a big challenge, and it's so very important. So we should attend to breathing, nutrition, and hydration, drinking plenty of fluids, because we will get dehydrated, or we can get dehydrated, rest and relaxation, sleep and exercise, and also, by all means, safety. And attention to this can help us ensure that we stay healthy through our grief.
I've got a question here, which I think is interesting. It's from Ronnie, and she says, initially, after my daughter died, I lost weight for the first year. She says 2 years later, I'm gaining weight. Have you got any thoughts about this?
Well, that does happen. A lot of people do lose weight because they are eating differently. That's not unusual. I would suggest that the problem now is the increased weight, right?
Right. I was thinking of maybe that adrenaline rush early for her might have caused some weight loss.
Well, but usually we don't eat for the most part. See, some people eat too much and some don't eat enough. Mm-hmm. So she may not have been eating that much initially. Mm-hmm. And now she's eating more.
Do you think that second year can be kind of tough too? I think that maybe comes in to surprise people. Do you think, Alan, that might be the case for some people?
Well, I think so, and I think for myself and people that know me know weight is something that I've battled, certainly in grief. I think that also, in the second year, grief can kind of become something that, it is a comforter, just like for the rest of the world. And I think grieving people, if you go to our support meetings, you never see carrots and celery at the back of the room or after the meeting. We are some brownie-eating, cookie-loving cake people. And it was easy for myself, to take a little comfort from that. And I think that can happen. And I think this all ties together very nicely in the fact that, we don't get through this grief. We're not out of it in 6 months or, and being a couple years down the road, that we have to be mindful of all of these things. And so probably what I would say to this person is just like myself, now you have to pay attention to what you're eating, and are you eating healthy, and are you exercising? You may through some of the darker part of your grief, but these are still important. These are life lessons. I use this term. I say some grief lessons. The best grief lessons I've ever learned are really life lessons. And I think that's a lot of what you've given us tonight, Coralease, are some great life lessons that we carry, certainly help us in grief, but in the long term will help us in life in general.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been so great having you on the webinar, and I'm going to be excited to share it with everybody, aren't you, Alan?
I am. And as we wrap up tonight, I want to thank you again, Dr. Coralease Ruff, and say that, as an organization, the Compassionate Friends, we're really working to get the word out on this. And at our conference in Dallas this past July, we had a focus on health. Dr. Coralease has been gracious enough. You're writing for our national magazine, We Need Not Walk Alone, an article in each issue. Dr. Gloria, you and I have certainly talked about this, but Open to Hope, it's important to you too. So we want to get the word out. Coralease, we would love to have you come back sometime, and we'll follow it up and even get into more detail on some other things. But thank you so much, Coralease, for being our guest tonight. Dr. Gloria, thank you, the wonderful folks at Open to Hope, and all of the great information that you guys put out on your website. Thanks for being our partners in this.
The loss of a loved one can leave you feeling depressed, angry, alone, lost. But you don't have to face this journey on your own. Open to Hope is a free community for anyone who has experienced loss. Find support. Find help. Find hope. Give grief a voice at opentohope.com.